If you're spending 5, 6, even 7 hours a week in the gym trying to build muscle and lose fat, and you're starting to wonder if there is a smarter way to get the same results without sacrificing so much time away from work, family, and everything else you're trying to prioritize, this episode is for you. I'm going to show you 7 evidence-based strategies to cut your training time by 40 to 50% while maintaining or even improving your strength and hypertrophy gains. We're talking about as much as 150 to 200 hours back in your pocket every year. And the best part is you'll learn why more time in the gym doesn't equal better results. It is time to engineer your training for maximum stimulus per minute. Welcome to Wits and Weights, the show that helps you build a strong, healthy physique using evidence, engineering, and efficiency. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and today we're going to tackle a problem that affects just about every lifter I work with, and that is spending way too much time in the gym for the results that you're getting. Now, you might have heard that building muscle requires a certain amount of volume, and oftentimes more is better, depending on where you're starting from. And for many people, this translates to, I need to be in the gym for 90-minute sessions or potentially more, or 4, 5, 6 days in the gym. I know people who like to go to the gym every day of the week. And if you're not doing that, are you working hard enough to get the results you want? But in my opinion, that approach is not only inefficient, and I'm all about inefficiency or efficiency, it's often counterproductive. Many things in life, you do more, you do get more results. But when it comes to your body and your recovery, there is this fine balance. And so today we're going to break down 7 time-saving strategies backed by research, things that I really love that actually work. There are a lot of ways to save time in the gym, but these are the big hitters. And they're not really shortcuts, they're not hacks, they're just taking the principles and saying, okay, how can I do this intelligently to get the maximum stimulus, but minimize time, especially wasted time. And by the end of the episode, you'll know how to restructure your training to save as much as 2 to 4 hours every single week. Of course, it depends on where you're starting. And the goal is to still make all the progress you want to make. This is not like just the bare minimum I'm talking about. This is still making really, really good progress. Let's say 90, 95% of the results you could possibly get, but still saving time. And for some of you, it's actually going to improve your results because you're actually doing too much. All right, so let's just jump right into it and talk about the time problem, right? The typical lifter, if you're listening, you're probably training 3 to 6 days a week, but many of you, as you've gotten into the intermediate, maybe advanced stages, you've gone to 4-day splits, maybe a 5-day power building program, maybe a 6-day body part split. I've seen the whole gamut. And if you're doing fewer days a week, they're probably 75 to 90 minutes a session. If you're a new lifter, if you've never lifted before and you're listening to this podcast, you're like, that sounds like a lot. And it is a lot for a beginner. I think a beginner can get away with, 30 to 45 minutes, 3 days a week, period. And right there off the bat, if you're doing way more than that as a beginner, we can address that with today's episode. But a lot of you then start to creep up. You do more and more, you increase the volume, and all of a sudden you're training maybe 6, 7, 8 hours a week when you add it all up in the gym. And then you have your commute time, and then you have your warm-ups and rest time. All that stuff kind of adds into that, right? And there is a point of diminishing returns. And when I look at people's training logs, I see either redundant exercises that target the same muscles and they can just kind of strip those down. I see wasted time, or not necessarily see wasted time. I know people are wasting time like scrolling on their phones, for example. I see way too much warm-up that's not necessary. I see a lot of extra accessory or isolation work that could be eliminated or combined with other movements. I see too many sets. I see a lot of things. And I think it comes from maybe a misunderstanding of what drives muscle growth, but also just a lack of clarity and confidence of really what to do and what program's appropriate for them, or putting together their own program that doesn't make sense. We think of training volume. Volume definitely matters. It definitely matters. But beyond a threshold, more volume doesn't mean more growth, and everyone responds differently. So there's a sweet spot where you get that maximum stimulus with a minimum time, kind of like a curve, and we want to find that point for you, because unless you have the extra time, or you're retired, or you're a competitor or something like that, and you want to spend the extra time to get that little extra boost in optimization, that this episode's not for you if that's the case. We're actually talking about going the other direction and saving time. So my first strategy of the 7 is to just cut the number of exercises you're doing per session. And we're going to map this out. I think One of the biggest time wasters is bloat in exercise selection. And I see it online. If you just Google like strength training programs, you'll see these either full body or body part split programs that have like 9, 10, 11, sometimes 12 exercises, which is insane in my opinion. Again, unless you're Arnold doing 2 days for 2 hours a session and you're enhanced, and I'll see like lots of overlapping things, leg press, leg extension, leg curl, calf raises, flat bench, incline, decline, cable flies, pec deck, right? And a lot of redundancy, and it ends up eating up like an extra half hour than you probably need for the benefit. I want you to think of this in terms of coverage and efficiency with the movements, meaning the more you can do movement patterns that incorporate more muscles, whether it's targeted directly or indirectly, the more efficient you're going to be and get to do fewer exercises to get the same result. So the first principle here is thinking of movement patterns, not muscle isolation or muscle groups. Even though I talk about that a lot in the context of hypertrophy, the first principle we need to start from is the movement patterns, the squatting, hinging, pushing, pulling, lunging, carrying, right? The movement patterns. And when you structure training around those instead of muscle groups, you're going to recruit more total muscle mass per exercise, eliminate redundancy. You're going to find out that it's pretty hard on your body such that you need to make some trade-offs elsewhere, and still you're going to get the result, right? So instead of, especially if you're a beginner, but instead of like leg press, leg extension, leg curl, calf raise, you can do a squat variation and an RDL, for example. Squat variation, RDL, that's going to hit your quads, your glutes, your core, your upper back, a whole bunch of stuff. The RDL is probably the best thing to hammer the hamstrings, the glutes, the lower back. 2 exercises right there, complete lower body coverage and other muscles as well. And there's a lot of overlap. That's just one example, right? All the big movements have a similar result. And so when you equate weekly volume, we actually find there is no difference in hypertrophy as well, muscle size, when you spread sets across 10 exercises versus 5 exercises, as long as the 5 are efficiently chosen. But that could save you right there 30 to 40 minutes. So I really want you to look at the programs you're following. And if they're these really long, packed-in programs with a ton of movements, you're going to save a lot of time by consolidating those, thinking of the big movement patterns, the compound lifts. Very important, right? And what was the other thing there? Oh, and it's going to save you time because if you're going to a commercial gym, you don't have to worry about fighting for all those machines and worrying about their availability. So that leads me to strategy number 2, which is going to sound similar, but it's different in its own way. And that is to prioritize compound movements specifically, right? So the first strategy was really about consolidating the exercises. The second one is prioritizing compound lifts, squats, bench press, overhead, deadlifts, rows, pull-ups. Actually, rows, I prefer pull-ups to rows for newer lifters, but rows can get in there later on, not just barbell rows, but T-bar rows and chest supported and all that. But anyway, these are efficient because they hit multiple muscle groups, as I mentioned already, and they produce greater total muscle activation per rep, and they improve your work capacity and your tolerance for systemic fatigue as well, which is going to translate to your overall fitness level, your cardio capacity, and your ability to lift harder and with more quality with the accessory and isolation work, right? Just think about when you bench press, you're recruiting your chest, your shoulders, your triceps, your lats, your core, and you can change the grip and the width and target different things more effectively, like your triceps with a close grip. Compare that to like a chest fly. I mean, I love a chest fly as much as the next guy, especially when it's done bottom to top and you really, tighten that contraction, right? We're thinking of bodybuilding. But not if you're not doing bigger pressing movements. And it doesn't have to be a bench press with a barbell. It could be with dumbbells. It could be an incline. There's lots of compound lifts. So, and it doesn't mean you never do isolation work. It means you prioritize compounds first, build your program around that, then add isolation. And that is also going to save you a lot of time. So you're consolidating your lifts and then you're prioritizing the compound movements and doing them first, most likely doing them first. Okay, to get high effectiveness. All right, strategy number 3 is to use antagonist or non-competing supersets. I do love supersets these days. I used to kind of poo-poo them and file them under circuit training, but that's because I came from a world of either CrossFit or the gym machines where you're doing 5 exercises in a circuit and it's kind of random and rest periods and things like that. I think done correctly, supersets can still maintain your performance, but cut a lot of time because you're cutting rest time. And we know in the research, there's been some recent meta-analysis and studies that show comparable results, whether you're using supersets or not, but you actually save a lot of time. And the best way to do this is to pair exercises that don't compete for the same muscles or the same, let's say, stabilizer groups, like benching and rowing. That's pushing and pulling, or squats and, I don't know, calf raises, let's say. And that came to mind because I was thinking, if you have a squat safety bar and you're doing a version of a front squat, let's say with a squat safety bar, and then you could immediately go into calf raises. You could do the same thing with a leg press machine and calf raises, right? Things like that. Pull-ups and leg curls. Like if you're doing a full body day, doing upper body and lower body, those are definitely non-competing muscles. But even biceps and triceps, those are antagonists, right? Because while one thing is resting, the other muscles are recovered, ready to go, all out. You might need to take, say, 20, 30 seconds. You don't have to do it immediately. The point isn't to get your heart rate up, although there is that side benefit. The point really is to just cut time, right? And you're using the rest time now productively in between. You don't have to have as long rest time. But the effective rest period between the same exercise still ends up being longer because you're doing something else in between. So again, the research shows that antagonist supersets do maintain strength and hypertrophy and cut rest time by about 40%. So if you did that for your whole workout, which I'm not necessarily recommending, but let's say you did, a 60-minute workout would be as short as, say, 35 minutes. Same results. Now, I think a mistake people make here is pairing exercises that are competing with the same muscle groups. Like, don't do squats and deadlifts as supersets. Don't do, overhead press and, I was going to say overhead press and pull-ups. I don't know. You could try those, but you get what I'm saying. Like, the second exercise is going to suffer quite a bit, and you know what that is when you feel it. So it's okay to experiment. Now, you might want to do that on purpose to fatigue the muscles. That's a different strategy. That's not a time-saving, maintain performance strategy. That's more of a bodybuilding, like fatigue, get closer to failure more quickly strategy, which is perfectly viable, but it's not really about saving time per se. So if you do supersets, I would still have some rest period in there, like 30 to 60 seconds, so that your output, your reps are as effective as possible and you can, bang them out. So this could save you, like I said, 20 to 30 minutes a session. All right, strategy number 4 is to reduce the number of sets. And I'm going to combine this with another strategy, and that's training closer to failure, which you should be doing anyway, but I'm going to explain why. Most of your muscle growth is going to occur when you have that high level of mechanical tension. Now, there's a huge debate raging right now about whether anything beyond mechanical tension causes hypertrophy. Like, does the metabolic stress cause hypertrophy? And there's some camps that are like, absolutely not. It's all about mechanical tension. And others say that, we see studies that show when you have higher metabolic stress, like a higher pump, you see greater hypertrophy. And you know what? They're probably both right to an extent. It probably comes down to the first principle of the mechanical tension. Anyway, there's probably a lot of overlap or correlation is what I'm saying. And honestly, you don't have to worry about it. All you can control is how hard you train and getting close to failure. Now, how close depends on the lift, the safety of the whole setup, what your goals are. But everything beyond that is going to contribute diminishing returns. And what I mean beyond that is I'd rather you do 2 really hard sets close to failure than 3, 4, or 5, or you're half-assing it or you're not getting close to failure, right? That's where we're going to save time, because we do see similar hypertrophy with, let's say, 2 or 3 hard sets compared to 4 or 5. There's like this fine balance. And there are arguments, some people say, look, getting that third set in, if you are training really hard and you have the capacity, you're eating enough, you're sleeping enough, does give you that little extra volume that can help. Sure. But if we're trying to save time, is it worth it? Is the trade-off worth it? So by hard sets, we are talking about, I'm going to say, 1 to 3 reps shy of failure, reps in reserve, also called 7 to 9 RPE, rated perceived exertion, right? I mean, some people would argue and go as far as 4 reps from failure, but if we're only going to do 2 sets, I want you to get, in that really stressful regime, stressful in a good way, as in mechanical tension, close to failure. So a lot of people are doing workout programs that have like 4 or 5 sets sometimes, right? And then And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but then they're not really pushing the first 3 sets, and only the last 2 are challenging. And so then the first 3 are effectively becoming warm-up sets. Well, you should already be warming up anyway with a few sets, unless you're already warmed up, and then go after it really hard with the working sets. And so if you could do 2 or 3 sets instead of 3 or 4, that's going to save time, obviously, right? As long as you make it count. And I really love the 2-set idea in what's called top set, back off set. I originally learned this from my coach, Andy Baker. In fact, he was on the podcast talking about exactly this thing. We did an episode on bodybuilding a while back. But I've seen others use it. Jeffrey Verity Schofield has a good program that uses that structure. And I've seen it done with lots of different bodybuilders. And all it is, you warm up and then you do your working weight at some rep range, let's say 4 to 6 for 1 set. And then you drop the weight, say 10 or 15%, and perform 1 more high effort set, probably at a lower rep range or a higher rep range. If that makes sense. So your first set might be 4 to 6. You drop the weight 10 to 15%. Your second set might be 8 to 10. That's just an example, right? And doing those 2 sets really hard not only covers the 2 different rep ranges, but also reduces the volume, but still gets you some good work and saves time. And this might save 15, 20, 25 minutes a session if you normally have all 3 sets and now you do all 2 sets. And you know what? Try it out. See if your results don't change or even improve because you're training with maybe even more intensity now because you're so focused on getting those 2 sets to mean something, and you're not getting as much systemic fatigue. So it could be a win-win. All right. So that's the 4th strategy. All right. If you're thinking like, how do I structure all of this into a complete program? Because that is where people get tripped up is, okay, now I need to execute this. We've got you covered inside Physique University. Just to let you know, we have a whole bunch of training templates there. I call them training templates. I don't call them workout programs. They are training templates because they are flexible and we give you substitutions so that if your gym or your home gym doesn't have certain equipment, you can swap something out. We also help you understand how to do that and reprogram it for you. And we have a new template called Ignite. Coach Carroll came up with this. It is a time-saving template that is based on some of these principles. It's a 4-day upper-lower split, so it prioritizes compound lifts, but it also uses supersets, drop sets, strategic selection of your exercises, and you shouldn't require more than a half an hour if you're doing it efficiently for those 4 sessions. And it's still considered more of an intermediate program, so it's still going to get you great results. If you want access to Ignite, plus all my other training templates, we've got power building templates, we've got volume and set-based templates, we've got beginner templates, we've got glute and leg templates, and then all the nutrition coaching, community support courses that go with that. Just go to witsandweights.com/physique. The link is in the show notes. That's witsandweights.com/physique for the Ignite training template, and you'll see a special code in the show notes to get you another bonus along for the ride. All right, we've got 3 more strategies. So strategies 5, 6, 7. Strategy number 5 to save time in the gym is to increase your training density. Now, we talked about supersets. That is kind of a way to increase training density. You're not actually doing more training, but you're doing it in less time. So I'm going to expand on that with this one with some other ideas. Training density is effectively your work divided by time, right? How much volume are you moving per minute? The higher your density, the more efficient your training, with the caveat that the efficiency isn't offset by a lack of performance because you're moving too quickly and not resting enough. Get it? So we got to make sure we're not becoming a YouTube workout here or an F45 or a CrossFit workout. We're not trying to do that. All right. No offense to YouTube workouts because I know that's a catch-all, but you know what I mean by that. So what do I mean here? Well, you could shorten your rest periods on your accessory movements. I am a big fan of resting enough on the bigger movements of like say 3 to 5 minutes. Some of the, I'll say quasi big movements like an RDL, you could probably get away with 2 to 3. And then the accessory movements, you can get away with a minute, maybe 2 and be okay. And sometimes that actually is helpful, right? Because it keeps you close to that failure point. Like let's say you're doing 3 sets of maximum pull-ups, take no more than 2 minutes between them and just go really hard. And you'll probably not be able to get as many reps on sets 2 or 3, but you're still going to get that those effective reps, right? And again, there's arguments about this. Should I take a full 2.5, 3 minutes here to be able to get what my maximum reps would have been? Again, it's a time versus outcome trade-off. I don't think it's worth it for everybody if you're trying to save time because all that rest period adds up. Okay, so putting that out there. But the other piece here is put that damn phone away. And, I'm talking to myself here. This is critical because a lot of people think they're resting a certain amount of time. Maybe they do have a rest timer, but then they're scrolling Instagram, they're checking their email, they're trying to do work, whatever. Maybe it's productive stuff on your phone. I don't know. But then you end up resting another minute or two, and it kind of adds up. I would rather you just pace around and get some steps in and just be mindful and ready to jump in, which, by the way, could be more effective for your training anyway when your headspace is into the workout rather than constantly getting distracted, right? Because that is not the point of training. And again, I'm talking to myself here too. I do this a lot, and I know I'm here to train. And really the way to do this completely is abstinence, meaning leave your phone in your bag. However, if you're using it to track your workout, I know you have to have it out. So just put it down between sets. So that's one thought as far as training density. Another thought is to expand the superset concept to 3 or 4 non-competing exercises, if that's possible, and then rotating them together. Again, you're like, well, isn't that more like circuit training? Yeah, kind of. But again, if they're non-competing, you can still expand that same concept. If you're going to do leg press, then hamstring curls, then calf raises, and then some loaded ab crunches on a cable, right? And if you're doing cable work, for example, that could be an efficient way to do it as well because you have the machine and you can just change the positions and stuff like that, change the attachments. So 3, maybe 4. Don't go beyond that because then it truly becomes more of just like a circuit where you may lose performance and get too winded during the process. But again, hypertrophy isn't going to get sacrificed very much at all. If anything, you might get closer to failure in some of these movements because you're a little bit fatigued. So really think about organizing your workouts. Just because a program doesn't say to do it as a superset doesn't mean you can't, or you can't move the lifts around to get more work done in less time. That's my thought there. All right, strategy number 6 is to use rest pause or myo reps or drop sets. Basically, any type of set where you're shortening the time it takes you to do the reps, or you make it where you can't do as many reps, but you're close to failure. So this is, again, expanding on some of the concepts we're already talking about. So what are these? Well, rest pause is where you perform a set, you get close to failure, and then you only rest 15 to 30 seconds. That's all it is. And then you do it again, then you do it again. And so the general drop-off is something like 50%. So if you're able to do 12 reps on set 1, you'll probably get around like 5 to 7 on set 2, and then maybe a little more than half of that on the third set. Really depends. What I like about these, besides saving time, they actually teach you what training hard feels like. They're actually a really good technique for that, because once you get to that second and third set, your brain is like, wow, I'm surprised I'm already tired, but I'm only getting 5 reps so far. Come on, I got to get another one. It's almost like your ego helps you out a little bit there because you're like, I should be able to get more, right? And then you realize how much things get fatigued when you don't take enough rest. And in this case, you're intentionally not taking enough rest. So this is great for accessory work. Like if you're going to do, I don't know, let's say incline dumbbell curls with dumbbells. By the way, little tip on incline curls. They're one of the best barbell curls if you do them right. If you're back at like a 30-degree angle, kind of like when you do an incline bench press and you hold dumbbells, you curl them out at an angle, right? Just keep your palm up and curl them out at you, kind of like wings, just out and all the way down, get that full stretch, and take a short pause and then up from the bottom. Anyway, so something like that, you'll see how tired you get on sets 2 and 3, but that's the point, and it also saves you time. Another example of this is drop sets. Drop sets are where, again, you go to failure, and then you immediately drop some weight, continue, repeat a few times until you're done. Another example of this is density sets, where you just try to get 50 reps as quickly as you can, whatever rest you can fit in there. Another way to do this is time-based. You're like, okay, I have 3 minutes, and I'm going to go back and forth between these two, or I'm going to do just this one thing. I'm going to do neck curls, or I don't know. I'm thinking of that because I actually just tried some of those ab crunches. Like I said, something really small and isolating, and you're just going to bang out like as many reps as you can in X number of minutes, right, in AMRAP. There's nothing wrong with these for the isolation movements as ways to save time, and you're probably going to get similar, if not better results doing them while saving time. I would, however, limit them to maybe a couple exercises per session. Don't do it with everything. Do them with machine work, with isolation work. Do not do these with heavy barbell movements where your form is going to break down. Now, obviously, if you're using a barbell for bicep curls and you just want to do drop sets there, that's fine. That's not what I'm talking about. So this might save you 10 to 15 minutes just glomming a couple exercises together and using these density techniques, rest, pause, drop sets, etc. All right, strategy number 7 is really about your warm-up. I think a lot of people are spending way too much time warming up before they lift. 20, 30 minutes, foam rolling, stretching, activation drills, way too many ramp-up sets. They're not sure where their working set is, so they do too many warm-up sets. Generally, 5 to 10 minutes of general warm-up max, which might include a little cardio, dynamic work. Maybe you need to stretch and loosen up, whatever. I'm cool with all that. I'm not going to criticize any of that. I think it's great. But maximum 5 to 10 minutes. 5 minutes probably. And then your first lift, you're going to have 3 to 5 warm-up sets most likely. That is how you warm up because you're warming up the movement pattern. I've done entire episodes about this, and we actually teach about this in Physique University. We have a whole series called Lifting Lessons, and we give you the warm-up ladder. We teach about all the different things like bracing and breathing, etc. But effectively, just get warmed up if it's cold, raise your core temperature, and then 1 to 2 sets, or not 1 to 2 sets, 3 to 5 ramp up sets leading to your working weight, where you're increasing the weight, you're dropping the reps, and then you hit your working set, right? So if your working weight is 225 pounds, you might do 5 at 135, 5 at 135. Let's see. Let me think of this the right way. No, let's start at 95. You might do 5 at 95. You might do 3 at 135. You might do 2 at 185. Maybe 1 at 205, but probably not. Then you jump to 225, right? Something like that. So that's definitely going to save time if you're not doing that already. All right. So if we add all this up, I actually did some math here. If you're spending 5 to 6 sessions in the week, 75 to 90 minutes, right? That's like 7.5 hours a week. That's 390 hours a year. If you did all of these strategies and you reduce the number of sessions, you reduce the time, 4 to 5 sessions, 45 minutes to an hour, then that's like 3.5 to 4.5 hours a week. So that's around 200 hours a year. So you just reclaimed like 150 to 200 hours a year, which is up to 4 full weeks of your life back. Again, that's the extreme, but you get the idea. And that's without sacrificing the result with your muscle, your strength. And a lot of people improve when they do things like this because they're training with more focus and with more intensity and better recovery. And sometimes this increases your metabolism because you're not as stressed. You're able to get more sleep. You get it? It kind of compounds on itself. So it's not about training more, training longer. It's training more intelligently, more efficiently, building that system that works for your life. Now, there's one huge side benefit I haven't mentioned yet. When you train more efficiently, your consistency goes up. Because when your workouts are shorter, you have a little bit more motivation to go. You have more time to go. You're less tired and fatigued, so you have more energy to go, right? And so you've just reduced a bunch of friction. And that just naturally makes you show up more, look forward to it more. It's exciting. It's fun. It's not this huge commitment, right? Some people love working out 90 minutes, 6 days a week. That's fine. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about people who want to save time and still get the result. And so there's this compound effect of efficiency like this. Shorter workouts lead to better adherence. That leads to more total training volume over time. And that is where the results come from, is that volume over time applied consistently. So I do see this a lot. We have a lot of clients, this might be you, that come in, they're kind of burned out from quote unquote working out so much. And they're like, but how do I, that's not working. Do I have to do more to get more muscle and more fat loss? No, sometimes you have to cut that sucker in half and get rid of all the cardio. And all of a sudden now you start going to the gym more often because it's fun. It doesn't take that much time. You're walking in between in a flexible way. And now in 6 months, 12 months, you've made huge progress, way more progress you've made in the last 3, 5, 20 years or your whole life, possibly, most likely. Consistency beats intensity every time. Remember that. The intensity can ramp up slowly over time once the consistency is in place, and being efficient like this increases your consistency. And then again, the other benefit is you enjoy training again. It becomes energizing. You look forward to it. So really, it's not just saving time. It's building a sustainable, consistent system for training. All right. So if you want the exact training template, that puts some of these into practice. Check out the Ignite program inside Physique University. Go to witsandweights.com/physique. It's a 4-day upper-lower split. We have a full library of other templates. We teach you how to do it. We give you substitutions. We give you training videos. We give you, of course, support. Lots and lots of ways for you to succeed. Make this consistent. Get the result you want. Build that muscle. Lose that fat. Go to witsandweights.com/physique or click the link in the show notes and make sure to look for the code in the show notes for an extra bonus. All right, until next time, keep using your wits, lifting those weights, and remember, efficiency isn't about doing less, it's about doing what matters the most. I'm Philip Pape, and I'll talk to you next time.